and welcome back to Tech Talk with Boyum. I'm your host, Leert, and today we're diving into how manufacturers are transforming the digital customer experience to meet rising expectations and also the data challenges they face along the way, especially when it comes to getting product information ready for online channels. Joining me is John Tainer, Vice President of Strategy at Fusionary, who's worked closely with product information management for years. John, great to have you on the show.
Laird, thank you so much for the invitation and opportunity to speak with you. Boyum is a really important partner with us, providing PIM solutions. So yeah, glad to be a part of this conversation today.
And great to have you. Like maybe you want to start a bit about introducing yourself and also Fusionary?
Yeah, well, again, I'm John Tyner, and I have got 25 years of experience working, as an executive in pretty large publicly traded companies. A lot of my experience has been around the direct-to-consumer business, but also for quite a few years now, business-to-business commerce. Really fortunate to have enterprise level experience with those things in large and global companies. Fusionary in particular, where I am today, is a solutions integrator. So we have a number of different partners that we work with that are e-commerce platforms or content management solutions or product information management solutions, search solutions, etc. All of these tend to be the systems of engagement that organizations are looking to add to their technical infrastructure, typically around their ERP solutions. So we specialize in the implementation of these things and some of the more complex integrations that are required to get these things to run the way that they need to support the business operations.
So like there's one thing we see when we look at surveys that are done on this topic is that 83% of B2B customers prefer to interact with manufacturing vendors online, and that's even in cases where traditional customer service is high. And why do we think that is?
Yeah, this is a fascinating shift that has occurred, and that's a statistic, Laird, that we share during the selling process pretty frequently because customer behavior has simply changed. Their expectations have changed, and it's really a good point that you brought up that the expectation is that at their own convenience, in their own time, they simply want to be able to access the manufacturer's resources to, as an example, simply manage their account. Perhaps they have payments to be made and they want to be able to do that. Also, they may need to order parts, reorder parts, or they're looking for information that's associated to solutions that they have already and needed to access these things quickly. And they want to do this in their own way. And we typically refer to the solution that they use to get that as something like a customer portal. And it's true that they want to do this, despite, as you said, the manufacturer may have just really excellent customer service. It doesn't matter that they can provide that over the phone. What they're really looking for is what we call self-service. And that puts a significant burden on organizations because what we reveal in the process of trying to meet that expectation are all kinds of shortcomings in terms of the data that the organization has available. They tend to have siloed information and it's not aggregated as it needs to be. And so it's an exercise in tribal knowledge is what we call it, where the customer service person knows how to get all of these answers very quickly in a conversation. But when the customer service person is removed from the situation, and then the systems have to do this, there's real shortcomings there. So there's a great opportunity for us to step into these moments and aggregate the data so that we can create the expectation that the customer can kind of do these things at a self-service level.
And do we see this all over the board, or is it more like particular industries or product types where this demand for online customer service is growing?
Yeah, it's growing dramatically, and kind of the two particular verticals where we see this having really accelerated over the last couple of years are manufacturing and distribution. So it's both of those, and it's very difficult from our perspective for either of these verticals to sort of do these things because they're so very focused as a manufacturer, as an example, on the research and development and production of what they do. That it's not really a focus for them to think about the self-service aspect of what they're doing. It's a little bit easier for the distributors, but it's
Mm.
still challenging for them. And typically what we see on the distributor side of things is that their data sets are vast. So manufacturers can have, significant products and product variants, et cetera, et cetera. But for distributors, they may have many, many lines of products with many SKUs in each. And so it can be like a 10x data
Mhm.
issue compared to the manufacturers. But those are the two verticals where we see this having really accelerated over the last 2 years.
And like, so when industries see this and they are, let's say they want to invest in a system that handles this, what are some common issues or that they face or like that they face during this?
Yeah, the common thread here is that all of the conversations that we have here start with data. And, we find this at Fusionary to be true sort of across the board, regardless of whether we're talking about, a customer portal or meeting a self-service requirement for your customers. They may be talking about, content management solutions or commerce solutions or whatever. All of these conversations start with data. And in particular, in this case, when manufacturers and distributors want to implement a self-service solution, which we typically call a customer portal, data are the first thing that we are chasing. And it's often surprising how unstructured and sort of siloed the data are for these organizations. And because they just don't think about it, as we've discussed, in an aggregated way. And
Mm.
what's fascinating is that we, as we begin to talk about these things, often we're touching on pain points that the organization has, but may never have dealt with prior to this time. So we can say, hey, there's some data issues we need to solve in order to create this experience, and the customer service person will put their hand in the air in that conversation and say, well, I have to deal with those problems all the time. I'm in this system and that system, and I'm over here, and these things are out of date, and what do I do? And so it's something that already really exists for them, and we describe it as a chronic pain that the
Mm.
organizations have. It's very common for us to see manufacturers and distributors with this chronic pain. And so if you think about a person who maybe has an old injury and they sort of walk with a little bit of a limp, but they still walk, that's a chronic kind of an issue.
Mm.
These organizations tend to have that. They've just gotten used to the pain. And so it's just part of their processes that, oh, well, this is hard for me to do, and I have to do all these things to kind of get this answer. And yes, it would be nice if it would go away, but it never really occurred to me that someone would be able to do this. So these
Mm.
questions that we first get to the data first. And again, they just expose things that are actually typically known, but never solved for in the business.
And like I can imagine when customers are trying to get the customer service that they need and they keep meeting these hurdles that in a landscape that's changing like this, like it is a huge issue for companies when competitors are having easy like are having like an easier customer service system, and then they don't. So like I can imagine it's the customer frustration, it surfaces a lot during these situations.
That's exactly right, Laird. There's simply an expectation that this should be something that you can do, and in it's a little bit unfair in a sense, because as consumers, we're just very used to the idea that we can go online and make a purchase for, I don't know, a sweater or a
Mm.
pair of shoes or something, and it's just so easy, and you can find all the information you need quickly, and it's not fair to take that expectation into the B2B
Mm.
environment, but it exists nevertheless. And so that's what's pushing us to make that happen. But also, you're exactly right. When customers are making the request to purchase or wanting to do this, they're not just buying things from one distributor or one manufacturer. And to your point, when they start to find organizations that have kind of gotten over this already, made the investments, created the easy self-serve solution, it's like anything else. The customers will tend
Mm.
to migrate away from the challenging interaction and towards the easier one. And so it becomes a real competitive
Yeah.
disadvantage if they don't, or the opposite, a real advantage if they do create these customer portals. Now, there's a whole other perspective on this exact same issue. And so if we switch the conversation around from the customer's perception of their interaction with the manufacturer distributor, and we look at this internally, how are the employees of the manufacturer or distributor, how are they working? What is
Mm.
their experience like? The exact same sort of issues surface in reverse. And where this tends to show up is in the ability for these organizations to recruit new talent and retain the talent.
Mm.
If they walk into a situation where they're forced to sort of deal with these disaggregated data, siloed data, and have to go through all of this work to try to get simple answers, this is not their expectation. And especially as we refer to people who tend to be maybe less than 35 years old, we tend to refer to them as digital natives.
Mm.
They simply don't know what it's like to not have these technologies available to them. They didn't ever know anything else. It's very difficult to recruit digital natives into an organization that doesn't have a level of sophistication, of
Mm.
sort of baseline sophistication. So the organizations that kind of don't get to this really have a hard time recruiting new talent, because the talent walks in and says, well, show me how you work, and they show them, they're like, whoa, I can't believe you work this way. And it's interesting because the customer is having that thought and the employee is having that thought. So it's working in both directions. And so there's a real call to action for manufacturers and distributors to move forward, because if they don't, they're going to lose customers and they're going to have a hard and harder time getting people to work there.
And like you mentioned all these issues, and like how would you say that a product information management, like a PIM system, helps bridge this gap, like to create a competitive advantage, both on a management level, but also employee retention, like you mentioned. Um, like how does a PIM system help manufacturers deliver what they need in this aspect, in this changing environment?
Yeah, the PIM solution really, I mean, these are relational databases. You could think of them as just tools, and I don't certainly don't want to minimize the tool itself. And especially something like a Perfion from Boyum, which is just sort of essentially infinitely extensible and very configurable. You're not writing code to make a solution like this work. You're simply configuring it and building the schemas as need be, to kind of do what they need to do for the particular customer. The stuff that you're getting at there are first of all, identifying where are these data silos and how can we build integrations to these things so that we are systematically feeding a single source of truth. And then understanding, okay, if we're aggregating these things, then who are the potential, let's call them customers for the information that we've aggregated? And those, we're talking about as an example, customers, simply being able to come in and look at account information, previous order history, relevant to the products that they may have purchased, information related to those. The PIM is a fantastic way to pull ERP information out as it relates to order history, going over to wherever their inventory, or then into the product, as in example, product line management, or these other tools where we sort of keep track of our product from a development perspective, pulling all of these things in, and then bolting on payment solutions, etc. The PIM is a fantastic way to pull that information together. Typically, there's a commerce site that's aggregating in there as well, because an ERP certainly has a product in there that, and at a certain price, etc. But it's typically never going to have like a description of what that product is that may appear at a customer or consumer level on a website. You need another source to get that information. Imagery. An ERP is never going to have photographs of products. That's just not its purpose. And so we need to pull those in from someplace else. But that makes the customer portal experience what it needs to be in order to sort of complete the picture, so to speak, for the buying process or information gathering process, so that they're sure. Because especially when you get down to manufacturing, the nuanced variation between products can be so subtle that it's really important often to have really highly detailed product descriptions as well as imagery, because what you're trying to avoid is, as an example, ordering the wrong part. And that's just very frustrating for everybody. Returns are just so challenging. So the PIM is a wonderful way for us to kind of tie these systems together. And again, I just want to emphasize doing the connections, making these integrations, and doing it in a systematic way so that they are without intervention from people automatically updating information that's in there. Those are the best implementations of PIM solutions from our perspective, because then the information is as close to real time as possible. So as things are changing, the PIM continues to be a single source of truth. And I just want to kind of put over the top of all this a process layer. So as an example, it's very common for a manufacturer to develop a part and begin to manufacture it. And they get information from the marketplace back over a period of time that says, hey, there's an issue here with the product that you've made. You should make a small modification to it so that it improves it. It's not fundamentally a different part, but it's going to perform better if you make this small modification. And so as a running change, a manufacturer will alter the product. Well, it's critical that that alteration and information gets into the hands of the customer so that they can understand that I get that first generation product, the second generation product, so that they know, what am I ordering? Or if I'm ordering something again, am I getting the first one and the second one? These look different from each other. We need systematic ways for the PIM to be populated so running changes from a manufacturer are updated. Same thing on the distributor side. They may have a product one day that meets the criteria that the customer needs, and that product may no longer be available, but they substitute another that does exactly the same thing, and it has a completely different part number. It's critical on the distributor side of things that, again, that information is systematically provided. So when the customer shows up in the customer portal, they're able to get the current information and get the right thing, the right information the first time. So that's what the PIMs allow us to do, is aggregate those data and reserve them and do it in a systematic way.
In your experience at Fusionary, do you have like an example of a company that you've been serving, like implementing a PIM system and the changes they've seen in
Yes.
this aspect?
Yeah, we have a customer that is in the kind of the deep south of the United States, and they are a distributor, and they have many, many, many SKUs that they provide to their customers, and it's a wonderful organization. People are heavily reliant upon them, and they live in the manufacturing, operations, and repair space. So MOR. So if you could think about heavy equipment, these people are providing critical, ongoing sort of maintenance and parts things to the MOR part of industry. And so there's constant change in the lines that they're providing and the products within the lines, as new things are required or things that have been in place have changed. And when we first met them, it was really, in many respects, just very kind of confusing or messy. They just had a lot of products and a huge, huge challenge to understand. I have this one product that I need from you. There are 3 other manufacturers that make something that's very similar to that. And then there are variations of those. How does the customer know? Yes, you can substitute the one for the other, or no, you can't. And how do I keep track of all of these things? And then they change over time. How do we keep track of this? So we were able to implement a PIM solution for these guys, do it systematically. And what you wind up getting is that the organization itself is actually connected now to the manufacturers whose lines they carry. And we're actually pulling those data from the manufacturer into the distributor's solution so that the information is current. And we do that from many of them. So if you've ever been into a distributor's business before, they often will have giant catalogs sitting like at a counter, and they're kind of turning pages and looking up things that people need. And as soon as those catalogs are printed, they're out of date because stuff changes so quickly. And so if you think, okay, well, you need the digital sort of version of that, that's great. But even the digital things are changing constantly. So how do you keep up with it? And so that, in this case, this distributor, we've connected them to the various manufacturers. So as they make their updates digitally, we're pulling them in to keep the information that they have current. And it essentially allows them to have a much better understanding of sort of what they have, what people are purchasing, where the behavior is going, and how they're managing all of this. And of course, the customers have a much, much easier experience than they did before, because previously it would be a challenge when a product number changed or a product type changed, and they had to go on customer service on a phone call for 15 minutes trying to figure out what to do. Now they can do it systematically.
And like, what would you say to our listeners? Let's say it's a person who's in a management position, or perhaps they're a decision maker, but management is reluctant to change, or they listen to this and they think that sounds neat and great, but they are scared of making that investment and what that would entail. How would you say to people that are maybe a bit reluctant or hesitant to act on this the digital transformation?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say that we really respect their concern, because we're really getting down into the fundamentals of their business and talking about significant change, and so they are right to be a little hesitant. Um, I would say that with that though, the opportunity to dramatically improve their operations are very real by aggregating the data, because there's sort of the reasons we described in the example we gave, and also the competitive need to say it's more than likely that your competitors are doing this. It's
Yeah.
really only a matter of time. If we wake up in 20 years, everybody will have done this. So it's really not an if question. It's a when question. And people have different capital requirements, and they got to do things at the pace and rate that they can. But I would say there's a whole nother level to PIM that we didn't really talk about in the context of the supplier. And it gets to what you mentioned, Layer, which is digital transformation. One of the amazing byproducts you get from a PIM solution can be the ability to serve information into other parts of your own business that they previously may not have seen before. So creating dashboards for finance or sales or operations or manufacturing or marketing, for folks to see aggregated information about their business that they just couldn't find before, or they had to go through a lot of Excel spreadsheets to pull information out to try to get a perspective on things. These kinds of solutions, PIM solutions, can really facilitate the internal kind of capability, knowledge, and competence. So it works at a customer level, and if organizations are thinking about it, there's more than likely great reasons from the market to do it. But internally, it's amazing how much better your decision making can be, how much faster it can be, and more accurate when you have aggregated data.
Okay, so let's say the listeners listening to this and they are like, that sounds actually exactly what we need, and we would like to do it. What are the steps in that case?
Yeah, well, good news. It's a fairly straightforward process to have these kinds of conversations and get to a viable solution. It starts with a conversation, no surprise, where we can sit down and we go through a very high level discovery process. How does your business function today? What's kind of going on for you? What's happening? What do your processes look like? How are you staffed? And what are kind of what's your information architecture like? What's the structure of your business from a technology perspective? We can do those analysis fairly quickly, and then we can begin to get to goals. Are we trying to meet a customer service requirement? Is there a defined internal requirement? What are we thinking of the things that we're trying to solve for? And here, Layered, is where the pain points surface, as we discussed earlier, where, as example, the customer service person says, oh my gosh, it takes me so long to do these things, etc. You'll find that there are pain points typically across the business that are associated to this. Those will surface in this discovery process. And then we can very quickly move to, frankly, implementation. Because of the power of Perfion and its ability to be a configured solution, pretty quickly we can start to, depending on data quality, define what the schema should look like and begin to populate things. And then it becomes a process of data hygiene. What's the quality of the data? Are we missing things, and can we supplement that? And then we move to the integration part of it to say, okay, great. We're feeling good about the structure, and let's talk about how we integrate these things so they function from a systematic perspective going forward. And so, I mean, you can think about this as, sort of 30 days of time where you're really getting your arms around stuff and you can start to get something in place, another 30 days of real work to populate and kind of do hygiene. And then you're going to do another 30 days-ish where you're starting to get systematic about this. And it's not unreasonable to think, within 90 days or so, that you have got a long way forward into the data aggregation. And then you can begin to think of, okay, great, how do I start to use this across the business?
I think you've definitely given our listeners something to consider and think about.
Great. Well, happy to have conversations with
Yeah,
folks if they would like to reach out. But
yeah,
I just,
definitely.
just want to emphasize again that the hard work, in my opinion, from a tool perspective, has really been done already by Perfume and Boyum.
Yeah,
The solution is really robust. It's sort of, as I said, sort of infinitely extensible. One worry people have is, gosh, will it be big enough? Can it hold all of my data? That's just not an issue. The solution is more than capable of handling, whatever it is that's needed. So it's as close to unlimited as we could, kind of imagine. So yeah, happy to connect with folks and discuss, and delighted again to have a chance to talk with you today, Laird, and just
yeah.
kind of get to some of this stuff.
Thanks a lot, John. And I'll add perhaps your LinkedIn to the podcast description. And if anybody would like to reach out, feel free.
I'd be delighted to chat with
Yeah,
whomever. So
yeah.
thanks a lot. This was great.
Thank you. And for our listeners, thank you for listening on this edition of TED Talk with Boyum, and see you next time. Bye.